Hello everybody, UB here, and today we're going to talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show, so let's get started. So the reason I'm talking about the Rocky Horror Picture Show is because I got to make a couple of costumes for the production that is put on in Stevens Point here, my local community. As you can see, this is the dress that I started out with to make Magenta and Riff Raff's alien costumes, and there were a lot of twists and turns in this project because these dresses that I started out with, each one had its own sort of personality and scenario to grapple with. The biggest being that these gold dresses were very, very slippery. The material that they're made out of just wanted to fall off of my sewing machine at any given point. And also putting another shoulder onto a shoulderless dress is kind of a big undertaking. I decided not to be a perfectionist during this particular project because I knew that it was really for the fun of it, and this production didn't need to be this huge, high quality sort of thing. But as you can see, I did do my best to be somewhat accurate to what is depicted in the movie, The Rocky Horror Picture Show. So this costume, I ended up adding some weight to the bottom of the skirt, and I thought that I would be able to do some quilting in that extra material, but really it wasn't going to work out well because of how slippery that fabric was, and so I kind of ditched the idea, but that extra weight that the more heavy material gave to the skirt, I think really fit the feel of the costume overall. So what you can see I'm doing here is I am taking measurements of the sort of like shoulder spikes that Riff Raff and Magenta have in their costumes in the movie. And this was kind of a nerve-wracking piece of the puzzle, if you will, because these pieces are not necessarily like put on top of their costumes, they're actually sewn into them. And like I said, the main dress is made out of a very slippery material. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to sew these into the dress. Instead, I was actually able to sew it on topically, and as long as my measurements were right, we were all good. I had to make 2 of these costumes, which also presented its own challenges, but when I talked about the 2 dresses that I was working with at the beginning of this video, I was talking about the other dresses that were bought in order to cut up to make these sort of fins on the shoulders of the dresses. And the trouble with this second dress is that it was made out of a faux leather, which my sewing machine had a very hard time with. I broke a lot of needles, and I am never working with that kind of material on my sewing machine again. Just putting that out there. It was really rough, but using some techniques that we've seen on the channel before, such as turning things inside out and what have you, I was able to make a larger fin to go underneath and a smaller fin to go on top. And it all turned out really well, and I made sure to finish the edges of those fins with a simple line of stitching very, very close to the edge that was sticking out, if you will. That made them sit very nice and flat, and regardless of the fact that they were sewn on top of instead of into the dress, they actually sat really, really nicely when worn by the actors. With that being said, that's most of the technical stuff that went into making these costumes, and you'll see some footage later on of a costume I made that was a tearaway mummy costume, more or less, for the titular character Rocky. But until we get that far, I want to talk about the Rocky Horror Picture Show. The Rocky Horror Picture Show is a long-standing tradition that that people have done for decades now, where basically the Rocky Horror Picture Show is originally a movie. And so people will play the movie on one side and have actors dress up and lip sync to the characters on the other side of a stage. And this live performance is very interactive. People will throw things from the audience. There are well-known call-outs that evolve and change every year. And it's really a great sort of community event for the LGBTQ plus community and their allies. The Rocky Horror Picture Show, the movie, is a little tricky because it's definitely dated in the language that it uses and even some of the plot points that are in it. However, it is recognized as a piece of art that really was a gateway to let LGBTQ people express themselves in media. And that is why a lot of more progressive communities celebrate this movie to this day, with the caveat that we have learned to be more inclusive, more gentle, etc., than what the original movie portrays. And we celebrate it as a milestone in LGBTQ plus communities and their expression on the big screen. With all that being said, I helped out with our local production, as I said, and here you can see that because I couldn't do the quilting on these alien costumes, I instead drew them on with a black marker. Originally, I wanted to be a lot more nuanced. I wanted to use different colors and such, but because of the plasticky sort of material that was used here, it wouldn't take color on very nicely, so I had to go just flat black, and it worked out really well for being on stage. Now, this is the other part, the other costume that I was talking about, the mummy costume, where essentially there's a part of the show where the titular character, Rocky, is revealed, and he is originally in all of these wrapped bandages, and slowly he gets unwrapped throughout a musical number. It's a weird show, and I highly suggest that people watch it. It's not necessarily kid-friendly, and it's very overwhelming. It is a musical, but it's a whole lot of fun. Anyway, this scene was a little bit tough for the actors last year when they didn't have this kind of costume, because they had to unwrap every last bit of that actor, whereas on the screen some of that action was cut out or what have you, so it was hard to keep up and it was hard to get into and out of costume for the actor. So last year I put together this breakaway kind of costume so that they could get into costume really fast, and then the other actors that were unwrapping him could just pull on the Velcro on either side of his legs, and that's how they would take the bandages off of him. I worked really hard to put a lot of texture into this, and I actually made a top for him as well, but it was kind of confusing and the Velcro was not a good choice, so they ended up just using the pants, and I think they will continue to use the pants going forward. But I really loved making all three of these costumes. I was gonna say both, but there were three in total, and I loved being a part of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. This community-centered event was a big lifesaver, and I really, really enjoyed being able to be a part of it. So thank you so much to the Authentic Theater here in Stevens Point for putting on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It is an annual event in early November. Mark your calendars, follow the Authentic Theater, or if you're not in the Stevens Point, Wisconsin area, feel free to look up Rocky Horror Picture Show extravaganzas and showings in your area and mark your calendar, because it is a very, very fun time. It's a great evening out, and it's always awesome to be a part of a community that way. With all that being said, thank you so much for getting to the end of the video. Here's 1,000 experience points just for that. You're a rock star. And I want to thank my patrons, Mark, Nathaniel, Twyla, and Liam. You guys are rock stars. If you would like to support the channel as well, you can find my link to my Patreon down in the description. Thank you so much for your time. Don't forget to drink some water, and I'll talk to you again soon. Peace.